You want me,
So, hi guys.
ask me questions or you want?
Oh no, I was just getting ready to start the introduction. I'm gonna just do the introduction, just like to speak to everyone, and then I'll start asking you questions.
Okay, great.
So hi guys, I'm here with Albert. I just had your name and then it just went.
Dabah.
Dabah. No, I knew. Like I practiced it.
Like Yabba. It's like Yabba Dabba do.
Yes. Dabba. I practiced it and I don't know how all of a sudden it just went out of my head. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Hi guys, I'm here with writer, director, filmmaker Albert Dabah, and he's going to talk with us about his new film, Extra Innings, which is a big topic right now about suicide, and his experience is a true story of his. I'll let him tell you more about it. So, Albert, yes, you can go ahead and tell us about your. And also here, if I forgot to tell you guys, my co-host Shanda Freeman is here with me. She's also an author, TV show host. She has the Pink Room. She's another amazing being that I work with and that I'm dear friends with. So she's here with us, and we're going to talk about a topic that we definitely need to get out there. You know, my show is all about mental health and mental well-being, meditation, and things of that nature. And so, with that being said, I just want to toss it over to Albert and telling us about his movie, Extra Innings.
Okay, hi, nice to be here. Thank you both. I'm a filmmaker. I've had a video production company for over 40 years called Simba Productions, but I set up a new company called Ocean Parkway Productions to produce this film called Extra Innings, and it's a film I've worked on for many years. I wrote 12 drafts, and one of the main things about the film is it's based on my true story growing up in my family in the 1960s. So the film was shot about 2 years ago. We shot for 22 days, and then post-production took about a year between video and sound editing. And since then, we've screened it. We've had about over 20 screenings in festivals and mental health places and a few synagogues. Then we had talkbacks that I was at with a Q&A afterwards, which was wonderful because I was able to get immediate feedback on the film. We won awards in 2 festivals, the Manhattan Film Festival, we won Best Picture, and then the New Jersey Short Film Festival, which was shown in Asbury in Deal, New Jersey, we won Best Picture, Actor, and Best Supporting Actors. For that, some of the festivals, we showed it in London. There were 6 screenings in London, which I attended, which was pretty cool. It was a film series where they showed some old films, new films, including Extra Innings, and a film that was played. I went there to do 2 talkbacks, and one of my favorite films of all time is a film called Midnight Cowboy. It was in 1969 with Dustin Hoffman and John Boyd. And I think I was 18 at the time. I was blown away by it. And my film played right after that. So it was very cool to see Midnight Cowboy and then Extra Innings.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite films too.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yes.
I have to watch it. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
Also, too, Albert, a film that I thought of when I saw your film was Interiors by Woody Allen. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Ever have a chance to see?
Yes, I saw Interiors. I'll never forget this. Walks into the ocean, and I believe she takes her life that way, if I'm not mistaken. But it was such a long time ago. But it's a film I want to revisit. Yeah, very, very unlike a Woody Allen film.
Right.
But really special.
Your film has that quality to it too, like Ordinary People was another film.
Oh, yes.
In that
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's funny because when I first was, I never thought I would write the film. I was looking for a writer originally, and I wrote an outline. And I am of Jewish descent, Syrian Jewish descent, and the Syrian Jewish community is a very close-knit community.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So on my outline back then, this is a Syrian Jewish, quote, ordinary people. That's how I was describing it to people. Because when I saw Ordinary People, I cried so much because of the guilt that the young man had for his brother, about his feeling that he could have saved him. It was the same feeling that I connected with when I saw it. And just the whole general feeling of the kind of disconnection between the family.
Absolutely.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Albert. I wanted to get an idea of at what age did this all happen to you? How old were you? And how did you deal with that grief at such a young age? And did you have to go to therapy? Did you need therapy after this? Or did your parents understand that this had been a hard hit to experience this? I don't want to give the whole movie away, but I know I wanted you to give us an idea of exactly what happened during your childhood, and how old were you when you lost your brother?
Yeah, so again, I lost my brother and sister.
And sister, yes.
And the age is the actual ages are different in real life than the film.
Okay.
I like to be pretty transparent about the film.
Okay.
I was 18 when I lost my brother.
Okay.
I found him, and he had taken all these pills and got him to the hospital. And, here I was. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know he took all the pills. They were his pills, his regular medication.
Right.
And the doctor came out and said after a while, I couldn't believe that he said it, even I was 18. He said, in the movie, the kid's 12 when it happened. But he says something like, did you know he'd take all his medication? I don't know. He goes, well, if you would have brought it there earlier, we might have been able to save him.
That's horrible.
I was devastated.
No, of course.
There was a woman sitting opposite me who heard that, and I'm like, oh my God, what did he just say?
Yeah, no.
I was by myself.
Oh, wow.
He ended up dying a couple of days later.
Wow.
He was in a coma, and it hit me hard.
Of course.
About 3 years later, no one recommended going to therapy, except 3 years later, kind of like in the movie depicts. I had a girlfriend, and I was in Brooklyn College and taking one of these health classes. It was like a big lecture class with 200 people, and the woman was really cool who taught the class. She was very, she would, she was pretty bold, and she would say stuff like, okay, like she was trying to show how sexist society is. What do you call a woman's vagina? And, people, had all kinds of names, and it was like,
like, what's going on here?
Right. Yeah, she was trying to say how it all sounds like a put down,
Right.
And, but people, I don't want to yell out the name right now here.
Right.
But, so I liked her. I thought she was very cool, and I went up to her. At the same time, I was seeing a woman who was a virgin at the time, and we were having sex, and it was very difficult feeling comfortable, both of us, and there's a scene in the movie that's similar to what really happened. I was in an intimate situation. It was hard for me to perform as at 18, 19, to want to be a man and be able to have sex. And I was, and I had, I went to talk to her about it. I had enough in me to feel open to talk personally to her about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she referred me to this therapist that she was seeing.
Mm.
And I went to see him, and I saw him for about 4 or 5 years.
Oh, okay.
And it helped me immensely.
Wow.
But again, it was all on my own.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of going, other than her recommending. And one of the things we talked a lot about was that I felt like I was the youngest, and I felt like I was fearful that I would turn out like him.
Right.
Some crazy thought, because nothing was very explained.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. Mental illness was not an issue that was talked about like it is today.
Right.
I mean, even today it needs to be talked about more
Exactly.
to reduce the whole stigma.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he explained to me was that I felt really sticks with me is like we all have issues to deal with in life, and it's a matter of degree how we deal with them, and how when someone says, "Oh, he's crazy," well, we all could be crazy to some degree.
Exactly.
It's a matter of how off balance we become, and how depressed we may come, or how disappointed we may get when things don't happen the way we hope they happen. And that said a lot to me. That the whole idea of a matter of degree, like we're sometimes we could feel we're not that far away from being totally lost, and sometimes we can feel the opposite so high that wait a second, calm down a little bit.
Right.
It can't be that good as it is.
Exactly. That's the reason why I stepped into this. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I stepped into doing this, is because a lot of times we are fighting the situation on our own. We're trying to cope. Like, you were such a young child, even though you were 18, you're a child. And being that no one was there to say, hey, this isn't your fault, it could have turned out any kind of way, with you. And thank goodness you did find someone who, even though it was years later, led you on a different path to get some type of therapy. But what I wanted to talk to you about is, with parents, at what is a great age to start talking to your children about suicide, mental health, or what signs can a parent look for when it comes to their children, that their children may be slipping into a depression or handling grief, especially at this time with what's going on? I'm sure there's children that lost their parents, grandparents, people that's close to them. How, also with an adult, but how would you talk with a child in reference to, because it's a heavy subject, and what can you do?
I think what age to talk to them about suicide or depression or stuff like that really, I think, depends a lot on the family and on the child.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I don't think, I was telling a friend last night I watched a movie with, the word came up, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, but it was something to do, I related it to perfection, and I said, I have to tell you that I think I always believed in something about perfection, but I don't anymore. I don't think I try to think out of the box as much as possible, and think not to give labels, but to take each situation as its own, and to try to make it, to understand it. So what age? I think like in my own family, I have 3 children now. They're 31, 29, and 28, a boy and 2 girls. And I didn't want to tell my kids about my brother and sister's suicide until my youngest was at a time that I thought she could handle it.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, I'm not married now, but we were married at the time, and we were on a family trip in Costa Rica. And it was one of these rainy days, so we were inside the house. It was a house on the beach, but it was a really nice, comfortable, warm day for us to just hang out. And I'll never forget this. I looked at my wife, obviously my ex-wife now, but her name is Pam. I'll just say Pam. I looked at her, and she knew I said, now's the time.
Oh.
Wow.
And she knew exactly what I was talking about.
Right.
It was crazy. Like, my daughter Gabby was, I think, about 13 or 14.
Okay.
Something like that. So the other kids were, 16, 18. Maybe she was a little over 14, I forget, but something around there. And I said, I had brothers and sisters, and I just said they had died, they were sick. So I told them what happened.
Right, okay.
Right.
And it was a wonderful feeling to just get it out.
Absolutely.
For them to know something about me that they never knew.
Right. And that's what children need sometimes too, to be able to connect with their parents and to see that vulnerability with your parents. And I feel like sometimes that's missed a lot in the home. Because I know for myself, the reason why I asked about the age, because I have some experience with people that have young children, and they're basically kind of dealing with having to broach that subject in reference to suicide and depression with their children, especially being that they're trapped in the house right now. Well, I don't want to say trapped, but they're confined in the house. And I know with my own self, when I was 14, it was my first suicide attempt, was 14. And there was literally no one in the house to speak with. And it was my secret. It was, my depression was my secret. My cutting was my secret. All these different things that I was going through was my secret. And although I may have had the signs of a depressed, sad child, no one picked up on it. So that's why, I want to kind of give parents the tools now. It's like, what can they look for and what can they do if their children has already tried to attempt, or they're talking with suicidal verbiage and things like that. Like, what should they do? What can they do?
Yeah. I think that it's really important to connect to your child in a way that you're just connecting to a person who you love, and be empathic to anything that they have to say, to try to, be in their shoes if they're possibly being bullied at school, or, sitting quietly, not talking much, like you seem like they might be ruminating about something. Look, I think those are signs. Or if there's, they're a little bit more aggressive than you would think a child should be, is another way to view your child. Are they getting in trouble in school? Do they have friends? What are their friends like? Do they have trouble going to school? Are they breaking rules all the time? I think there's a lot of things that we can see if we're open to see. I think we expect parents to be parents, almost like they're supposed to know everything, but we don't.
They don't.
We're not. I don't think as a society we're taught to be parents. I think that's real important. There's a lot of, I think religion is a very good thing, but it can be a very bad thing depending on how religion is portrayed. And I think with religion, there's a feeling of spirituality within it, and a lot of the way, I should say it, a lot of the way sometimes people practices religions is without any spirituality.
Right.
And what I mean by spirituality is any real feeling behind it, where you're not just doing because someone's telling you to do it. You're doing it because you feel there's something special from it, that there may be a greater power, or the power is within you to take care of things, but you have to develop it, and every day, like, really, it's like you had mentioned meditation, or one of your things to me, and I started meditating only since this COVID time.
Wow.
I did it before, but never on a regular basis. and I meditate every day for between 10 and 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I started praying again.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was brought up Orthodox Jewish, and I started praying for 10 minutes every day, almost every day. I'll miss some days and both meditating. And I also write in a journal every day, which I started a long time ago. I read a wonderful book called The Artist's Way, and someone turned me on to it, and it was a great gift, and I shared it with some other people.
Okay, that's true.
Writing in a journal can really get your feelings out.
It does that. That's really great therapy as well. Writing and journaling. After I used to meditate, I started meditating every day about 3 years ago. I tried it years prior, and it didn't click for me. And then like 3 years ago, it really stuck with me, and that was what helped me with my mental illness, with my depression and my anxiety, and basically helped me be able to manage it. But it's funny how you mentioned during this time it became because I fell off from doing it on a daily basis, and this time has brought me more closer to getting into my meditation, getting into my journaling. So it's funny how something like this that could be viewed as so tragic has brought me closer to my spirituality. And like you mentioned, sometimes if religion isn't practiced in the right way with a little bit of spirituality connected to it, it can be a bad thing, because not a bad thing, but it could offset some of the issues. Because I know I grew up in a Christian home, and the way it was brought to me was more of so strict, and there were so many rules and so many, you can't do this, you can't do that. It creates other issues for you, that other insecurities and other guilt that as a child you shouldn't even have to deal with. So, I totally understand where there has to be a balance.
Well, in the film, there's an actual, the son is confronting the father, and he says the father is telling him baseball's not for you because it's played on a Saturday, the Saturday you're not supposed to travel or go.
Oh, yes, okay.
And they're fighting about it, and he goes, "What do you mean baseball's not for me?" He goes, "Listen, I'm proud of being Jewish, but just because I don't follow the rules, I don't follow all the rules, doesn't mean I'm a bad person."
Right.
And that's the way a lot of the rules, the way some of these, whatever the rabbis or priests or whatever will practice, like this is the way you have to be. And not everyone thinks the same way. Right. If everybody thought the same way, we'd have a pretty dull world.
Right.
There'd be no art.
That's
There'd be no creativity. If you just did what you're supposed to do all the time.
Right.
I mean, sometimes people say the craziest people are the artists, but many artists are, will and break rules, and those breaking the rules, people say you can't draw like that. That's not supposed to. And then that becomes, sometimes it might be years after the person dies that piece of art becomes legendary, and people start saying, "Wow, look what that person did," and that person could have died penniless. There's so many stories like that, and I think that we have to follow our own path, whatever that is, and that can be difficult. I've gone through a lot of difficulties in my life, and revisited suicide again when my sister died years later. I mean, it's 50 years since my brother took his life, and 36 years since my sister took her life. And I just recently, about 6 months ago, which I remember tonight, is I joined a support group for people who lost their loved one to suicide. And I joined only 5 months ago. I never even thought about it. It never even occurred to me. And it's been wonderful. But it's like, I've been with people who lost people, same kind of thing 50, 60 years ago. And it seems when they talk, if I could happen yesterday. It's something that, you grieve over, but it doesn't ever really go away. It's there. But I made the film because I wanted to share it and for people to understand that this does happen. And my brother and sister did not have any kids, so I made it as a tribute to them.
That's
and
beautiful.
really the gifts that they gave me, what I learned from them, that helped me get through whatever I went through. And one thing I'll say is Extra Innings, because my dream was to be a baseball player.
Aww.
And for me, Extra Innings means hope, because the game of baseball is not finished by time.
Right.
It's not like hockey or football or basketball. When the buzzer goes, it's by who has the most runs at the end. So if it's tied after 9 innings, it goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about hope that life goes on, and we can still hope for the best and struggle for the best, and dream, and go for your dreams.
I love that message. I love that message.
It's gonna be hard, it's not. Yeah, no, and my dream became to make the movie, and I didn't realize it at first until I realized that I have to make this movie. I have to finish this. And when I finally did it and had the first showing, it was like incredible. It was for friends, family, and cast and crew. We had about 150 people.
Mm.
And the next day I had so many people calling me and saying, not just I did it, but how good it was, and how you really connected so many dots and told a story that you don't see often.
And how long did it take you to film it?
Well, to actually film it was 22 days of filming. Yeah. And which was a lot to do in 22 days.
That is a lot. It doesn't look like you did 22. It's very short.
Yeah.
It looks like, even watching the trailer, it looks...
When you think about something you're working on for so long and it's over in 22 days, it's kind of fun. But they were long days. They were like, 16, 15-hour days. And
I don't miss film.
I think because of the... Yeah, I think I would say because of the material, it drew a crew that was very sensitive to the subject. There were quite a few people who had lost their loved ones to suicide on the crew, which I didn't find out till later, or that were dealing with mental health problems. So there was a real connection. We worked together. I mean, there were a lot of problems, obviously. Shooting a film is like, to me, I've been in the video business 40 years, but never shot a feature film. I've shot a lot of stuff, some documentaries and a lot of PR stuff for companies, but never a 2-hour drama. And it was, you're dealing with a lot of people, and because I wore so many hats, I had to oversee a lot. That's why I got an assistant director named Brian, who helped out immensely because I was acting in the film as well. Which originally I wasn't going to, but then I decided to play my dad. And I'm really glad I did.
That's nice.
But I think film, when I told you about perfect, I think what I was trying to say is that, things can always be better. You can always change things. So I I'm trying to remember where it came up in my conversation last night. Oh, yes. The woman asked me, do you feel, or something like, do you feel like from doing the film, are you, wasn't completely satisfied. I'm trying to remember the word, but do you feel like, you got it all out of you, in other words. I'm trying to remember the word she used. And it kind of made me think about, I said, no, it's not like it's still there. You could see me get emotional. I still get emotional things about it. And when someone tells me they just lost someone to suicide, I right away feel like, my heart sinks. So it's not like making the film like it was almost like as you're grieving over or something like that.
Yeah.
And make you think of like, I don't look at life as black and white. Now it's over. Now it's not. You know, or like this is perfect the way it is. I mean, yes, I'll use the word perfect. Sometimes it's perfect, but then sometimes you can always change that. You can always change this. You can always add this. But at some point, you know, you make an end to it. And what you could have done, what you should have done, you know, we'll do that the next time.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think that you do the best you can. You work on it as hard as you can. I think a lot of I recently saw. I don't know if you have seen it, but I fell in love with the movie with Tom Hanks. I think we talked about it.
Oh yeah, Mr. Rogers. Yes, such a great movie.
It was so satisfying, and I wasn't a big watcher of Mr. Rogers, but I did see enough show to remember who he was.
Right.
But I actually got to meet Tom Hanks once, and he just seemed like the nicest guy. And I'm studying right now. I have a master's in social work degree, and I work as a therapist, because now I'm taking a life coach degree right now. I'm working on that right now, because I want to get back into counseling. And I felt watching that movie was like watching the perfect life coach. He was so sweet.
He was, and positive.
It was the best acting I've ever seen out of him.
He really was good.
Actor.
Yes.
So versatile.
Right. Yeah. He was definitely good in the movie.
Yeah, and but I think like people like that to try to be a person. When you talk about parenting, like to try to be a parent, not just to your own children, but a parent to people you meet. Like, in other words, sensitive to people in the world. You know, to help out where you can, whatever it is, to listen to people,
right?
To see what they're really saying. Sometimes,
right?
You know, as I'm taking these modules for the life coaching certificate, it's like revisiting for me how to be a good listener, and how to be empathic, and how to help people find solutions to whatever their problems might be at the time.
Right.
They could be very deep problems. They could be short-term fixes. They could be all kinds of things.
Right.
But I think being a good parent is. One person asked me at the end of the movie once, how did you feel about being a parent after what you went through as a child? And my response was, quickly responded, I said, I wanted to be the best father I could be.
Aww.
Because, and not that my father was a bad father, it's just that he just did what he
knew, right?
And you know, when you grew up in a certain culture, and there's nothing there to help you think outside of that culture, unless you're somehow get touched by someone or something that can help you make a left or a right turn a little bit,
right?
To make you see things a little bit different. But your mind has to be open for that. I recently was dating a woman who, and I'm really open about this, who I fell in love with. We were together for 6 months. It was an amazing experience. But she told me at the very beginning she has trouble with commitments. She was retiring from being a school teacher, and said, I'm leaving for Florida for 2 months afterwards. It's something I want to do. And I told her at one point I loved her, and it made her uncomfortable, she said. And at the very last weekend we were together, she broke up with me. It was, she just felt it was too intense for her. And I did meet her in Florida once, and I said, I feel like you have a black box in you that you can't find the key, that you need to find the key, because you're afraid because of your previous marriages, of how they weren't good marriages, or one marriage, but then boyfriends after, they were just she basically had to stay in the marriage. She had to be independent from that person and raise her kids.
Okay.
And not deal with the emotional part. And she closed herself off.
Okay.
And because of that, she couldn't get closer. And I think it saddened me a lot. And it saddens me for people who get into that.
Right.
Who have to feel they can't. I met her one weekend. Her friend died, and I was with her. And an old friend of her, a close friend, and every time she kept crying, she excused herself. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "You don't have to say you're sorry."
Right. Seems like she has issues being vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. You're afraid to be vulnerable. You're open. You're so compassionate. You're so sweet. You're so loving. You have so much to give and so much to get from love. And she was afraid.
Right.
And but I couldn't change her. She can go to therapy and maybe get help, but she has to want it.
Right.
People have to want to change.
That's it. That's the thing. People definitely have to want to change. And sometimes what I realize, a lot of times people don't even know that there's an issue that they need to work on. Like with your mention of hers, the vulnerability, and sometimes people say, well, I just can't commit. And there's so many other things. There's so many layers that they need to work on. And the funny part about it, sometimes when you get into these relationships with people, if you hadn't did the work, you would take it on as your own issue, not realizing like it's like, well, must be something wrong with me that this person can't commit to me, or this person, right? And it's like, and then when you get to working on yourself, you know that that's something that person needs to deal with. Because I know I've been a victim of that, just assuming when I'm dealing with a person who's emotionally disconnected or they just not available, and I just automatically start beating up on myself, saying, oh, well, I must not be good enough. I must not be this.
I blame myself right away.
Yeah.
She said, don't blame yourself, but something
it's hard to not,
blaming myself, like, what could I have done differently?
And it was nothing.
And it was nothing. She wrote me the night that I met her, the last time I saw her, and mentioned about this box of hers that she needs to. She wrote me that night. She said, Albert, you're so, what was the word she used? But basically said you're so perceptive and smart and amazing, and I have to look at that box when I get back home or something. Will she? Yeah, I don't know. Right. That's on her to do or not do. But
right.
I think sometimes, sometimes people never get to that point where they really want to take a deep look at themselves.
Right.
I have a friend of mine, I think he's never had a really wonderful relationship that lasted too long in his life with another person. And he goes to therapy when, for a little crisis for 3 or 4 times, and that's it. And he feels he's dealt with it, but he's never gone for long term, and he never gets through certain things. And I think he's afraid to be vulnerable. He's very tight.
Right.
And, so I think the way, for me anyway, is I've learned, and a lot by doing the movie, obviously, by letting go and opening up, is that by being transparent,
right,
and letting people know who I am. And I think as being an artist, you're opening you're being courageous,
right,
to put yourself out there. One person said this to me at the end of the film. It was in New Orleans. I'll never forget. It was the last. They said, "This is the last question." He goes, "Well, I don't have a question. I just want to say this was such a great gift for you to share this with us. It was so courageous of you to make this movie and share it with us." And when I was interviewed by Peter Travis from Rolling Stone, I mentioned that, and everybody clapped, and it was a real great ego thing for me. And I said, I never thought of it as courageous.
Yeah, it is.
It just never occurred to me, that word. But when I think about it, I think it does take a lot to
To be able to open up that way and be vulnerable, because a lot of times we go through things and we hide it, and I don't know why there's shame connected to certain things, or just, you know, these fears of judgment or whatever, and it's not even your particular situation, like what happened with your sister and your brother, but it is still very vulnerable. It's like seeing a soft part of me that I've grieved and I was hurt, and especially I can also expect with men to have to be vulnerable must be much harder. With women, we're allowed to cry. With women, we're allowed to fall out and have a full-on cry moment and grieve forever and be sad. But with men, it's always they have to wipe off their tear and, you know, just keep pushing forward. And it's not fair because men are human beings as well. So, you know, that is very...
Great point, because I had a big, in graduate school for social work, I had a big debate with this woman who actually I was going out with about, she was very women's lib, right? And I was not against women's lib at all. Right. She did this whole project on women's lib. And I objected to some of it because I made it, to me, it was overdone. Like, in other words, well, what about men? Men have to be that Marlboro guy, that strong guy on a horse who doesn't show his feelings.
Right.
Who has to go out and normally ask the woman out. And what if he's rejected?
Right.
How does that feel?
Right.
You know, how does it feel to cry as a man in public?
Right.
You know, we're not supposed to. And that's BS. We're just as human as a woman. Yes, women and men are. Somehow we're different, but we're also the same.
Right.
And we're human, and we're part of this whole human connection.
Right.
And whether you like women as a woman or men as a man, that doesn't make any difference. We're all have feelings and thoughts, and some are traditional and some aren't. And, you know, you know, in life, I think having a partner in life is a wonderful thing. Being alone is, if you're alone, you have to learn how to be alone with yourself. But even when you're with a partner, you still have to learn how to be alone with yourself.
Right.
And be happy with yourself and find the things that you like to do. Right. When you're not doing well, find how to get out of that funk that you're in.
I've realized, well, like with myself, and even with trying to get into relationships, and I had to honestly take a break myself to work with me, because sometimes when you're in a relationship and you're super happy, and then when that relationship is gone and then you're super low, it's like, okay, I need to find that balance. I need to be happy with myself all the time, not just when I'm connected to someone. So now it becomes a self-love journey, and getting rid of that gook in you that makes you not happy being with yourself, or wondering, figuring out why you feel you need someone to be happy. Why do I need that relationship? Because there's a lot of women that need to be in relationships, or even men too. There's some men that need to be in a relationship, and when they're not in a relationship, they feel empty. They feel alone. They settle for horrible relationships just to be with someone, and they settle. So I had to realize, okay, I'm not going to settle for something that doesn't make me happy. I don't have to be in this relationship to feel good about myself. And every time a relationship ends, I'm not going to keep beating up on myself like, I guess I'm just not good enough. No, get on that self-love journey. Figure out what it is that's making you sad, what it is that makes you feel that you need that partner, and start loving yourself and being comfortable with being by yourself and enjoying time with yourself. Going out to dinner by yourself, going to the movies by yourself, having that alone time. And then when that person comes, they're just an extra, piece of the pie, the icing on the cake, as opposed to the whole cake and, you're starving before they get there type of situation. So that's...
Yeah. Well, it was interesting with this particular woman I was talking about. The next morning, I was in Miami, and I went to the beach, I was staying right across from the ocean. I saw the sunrise, and it was just so beautiful. And I wrote her, and I said, I know the difference between us right now is because I'm watching this beautiful sunrise, and it's amazing, and I want to share this with someone in my life. And I'm telling you now about it, but I wish you were here, and I wish we could be together to go forward and share things like the beauty of watching a sunset.
Right.
And it became very clear to me that we were not on the same page anymore, and but that's when I know what I want, and learning how to enjoy it without anyone, and at the same time learning how to be open to the right person to be with, to share it with. Right. You know, there was a woman recently who contacted me from one of these dating sites, and I think she said she was having a couple of drinks of wine, and she, her husband had passed away. She was a widow, and she said that we had spoken a couple of times. She lived in Miami, and I was in New York at the time. And she said to me, we're on the phone, I think my husband sent me to you. I said, your husband sent me to you? Really? It was very sweet, but, and then she said to me, I said, are you drunk or something?
How many glasses of wine did you have?
How many did you have? I should have said, well, what did he say? You know? So then she said to me something really interesting. She said, well, if we went out together, how do I know you won't commit suicide? And I said, whoa. No one ever asked me that before.
Right.
It was... But it made me think, and I brought that question up to this woman last night. I said, it startled me, because I thought, well, that means there probably were other women who could have thought that when they met me once I told them that I'm from a family with 2 suicides. Right. And she said, yeah, that's true, because people think about what kind of family you're from.
Right, they think it's genetic, right.
Right, is it genetic? Is that within you and all that? So it was odd, and I just said, well, you know, it's not purely genetic.
Right.
It's not just because of this, that means that. I mean, it's one of the things that I used to ask that first therapist, because I was afraid I would turn out like my brother. And we talked about being genetic and versus environmental and all that. And he said at that time, this is a long time ago, so the jury is still out on that. That's how he answered. In other words, it's not an either or.
Right.
There's yes, there's genetics involved with so much stuff, but a lot, like if you're born in a family and you're the firstborn, and then there's the fourthborn 20 years later, your parents are not the same as they were the firstborn.
That's true.
There's a difference of whatever it is, 5 years, 10 years, things are different. Things change all the time.
That's true.
And environments change.
Right.
So we're not the same parent to one child as the next child.
That is true.
In other words, even if we say we treat them equally, that doesn't mean you don't, but things are different.
Right.
You know, you could have gotten a better job and you're living a different kind of life. Or your job went down. So many things could happen. Or you had an accident. You just say, you know, there's no one thing. Or who knows? But, and, you know, and when I'm depressed, I question, you know, how can I go? And then I realize, okay, I have to pick myself up. And sometimes I have that feeling I want to be with someone so bad. And then I say, relax, Albert. You're okay. You know, it's finding that when you can click with, and there's no perfect, see, that's where the perfect comes in. Is there a perfect marriage? Is there a perfect this? And we can say there's a perfect job, but what about that day when you come in and everything sucks? You know, or, you know, there are days that we have this, you know, you plan a vacation and something happens. something like this disaster we're going out with now with COVID, and then that poor guy dies, and then there's demonstrations and peaceful ones, and then looting, and so much craziness going on in the world at the same time.
Right.
And what's it like for a kid to grow up now, and what's it like for all of us to deal with
It's
this?
like watching a night. It's like being in a horror movie. I can only imagine what the kids are going through.
Yes.
I feel like we're in a horror movie. It feels like we're in like, I'm waiting for the credits to roll. Like, okay, when are these credits going to roll? Because this horror movie, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm just going to lock myself in the house.
Well,
and hope no one kicks the door down.
And everyone has a different way of handling it. You know, there are some people who are very, who before the COVID are very germophobic anyway.
That's me. Oh my God.
I went out with a woman once who oh really? You
would
never touch a door handle?
Oh, I don't. I'm like the ninja of door handles. I know how to kick it open.
Really? Oh, okay, there you go. And
I was definitely freaking out. It took me a while.
So I went on a date with a woman who I spoke to every night for 3 weeks or something, and she wore 2 masks.
Oh my God.
She goes, "Are we 6 feet away?" I go, I had my tape measure with me today. I'm sorry I left it. But I'm at least 10 feet away.
Right.
And there was helicopters. This was right when the demonstration started.
Right.
We were near where there was cops around. There were no protests. So between the helicopters and the 2 masks, and my hearing not being so well, I could hardly hear a thing she said.
What a date.
Albert, you're a great guy, but I'm not going to be able to date for 4 months because God. You know, I said, well, all right, fine.
Right.
Well, let's just be friends. You know?
Right.
And then I met someone else where it was totally different with her. We didn't have to wear a mask. And, you know, I don't know. And that's where we're all so different.
Right.
You know, should we wear masks? When do we wear masks? And even the scientists disagree.
They're both, there's so many different theories. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Wear gloves, don't wear gloves. It's so confusing. Right. It's like, what do you do?
Because I don't think there's I don't think there's a one way, you know, I think the main thing is being careful and, you know, and trusting to some degree. You know, she didn't want to see me, this woman, because I saw my son and my son went on a plane.
Oh, yeah,
said,
those people. Be quarantined for 14 days.
Quarantine yourself for 14 days.
Yeah.
I go, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
You know, so you want to hear something. So I told her, so she said, let's just be friends. So she said, have you gone out? And then after that, maybe a couple of weeks later, she said, did you go out with anybody else? Because she told me you should go out with other people. So I said, I actually did. And the first question, this was so funny. And this actually a relationship coach and a matchmaker when I went out with these. So she goes, did you go out with someone else? And I said, yes, I actually did. I was introduced by my nephew. So her question was so funny. She said, did you make out with her?
Oh, my God.
So,
like, you're at the drive-in.
So she goes, well, you guys are real rule breakers. I said, I guess so.
Trying to turn you in. No social distancing.
So I'm arrested, you know.
Yeah.
She was the one I saw last night and watched the movie with, and it was. We'll see what happens. But, it was, you know, that's where everyone is so different, but I've never washed my hands so much in my life. It was a whole good thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But,
yeah.
So I think we have to look at this period as a great time for self-reflection, for renewal of where we're at, of kind of, you know, looking at our pros and cons of our lives, what we want to change, what we want.
Right.
And I'm learning a lot from this
courses on life coaching, and it's like being in school again. And so I was never a great student.
Me
but,
neither. Oh my God. I was horrible. I was horrible.
And sometimes that's the problem with school, is because there's that pressure of grading and how good you are, and you can think you're stupid because you got a smart, as opposed to the guy who got 100, and someone's smarter and they get more attention. I mean, life has got so many different, turns to it. So I feel for kids who, I worked with a kid, I'll never forget. He was a young black kid. His name was Willie, and he lived with his grandmother, and he was heavy, and he was the sweetest kid. And to help, I worked with a lot of kids and teenagers at one time. So what I would do, this was in the therapy place, I would take him in the back. They had a basketball court, and a lot of times I'd say, "Hey, Willie, instead of talking, why don't we go in the back and shoot baskets together?" And by shooting baskets together, we were taught, and I would, gain more trust in him.
And I realized this with parents and with children. You have to you got to see how your child learns and what interests them. If your child is into arts and music and stuff like that, send them to that type of school. Send them to an art school. Send them to a music school. Get into those academics for them. Because I know for myself, I wasn't that child that could focus on just copy from the board, read these chapters, write a report. I needed more stimulation than that. I needed some type of excitement. And I only had one teacher in my whole childhood that saw that. My 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Marks, she saw that I needed an outlet. So she signed me up to go with the band to go sing and perform at different schools at St. John University. I used to go there and sing and perform while all the other kids, they stayed back and they did other stuff. But she sent me, and then she put me in plays, and I was Dorothy, and it was something that she knew that it got my attention and it made me excel. As opposed to, she said, she's just not that child. It's like nothing else captivates. I drift off and I zone out, and it was horrible. But when she did that, I realized, okay, this is what I like to do. And it made me, get more into being a creative. But after leaving, that was 6th grade, the rest of my schooling was, no one else took the interest in knowing what really spiked for me. So that's what you got to figure out. A lot of times people have to figure out with their kids, how does your child learn and what interests them? Because it can be very boring if that's not what you like to do. If you're not an academic person, I now read way more than I did when I was younger because it was so boring. It was so...
you see, you're remembering your 6th grade teacher as really inspirational to you. And that's special. And I think there are very few teachers that myself can remember as being like that kind of teacher. I think, I remember we had a graduate school, and in graduate school, you think you'd get some really high-end teachers. It depends, I guess, where you go and what experience they have. But this woman had only 2 years of working in the field of mental health. She went from being a student and then working 2 years, and now she's a teacher. And she was teaching abnormal psychology, which I had probably taken twice or 2 times before, between being a bachelor's degree and all that. And she was talking about schizophrenics, which my brother was diagnosed schizophrenic. And it felt like she was talking about a person who had 4 heads or something. Like, she didn't describe the person as a human being. It was like taking it out of the textbook and creating something that wasn't. I mean, my brother was a real person, He wasn't like crazy. Like, one of the things that came up last night in one of the scenes, the woman asked him, what was it like to be in the mental hospital? And he goes, it was horrible because I felt like everyone was crazier than me. And that's when this girl even started crying, saying, that must have been horrible to feel in a place like that. And, I mean, it must have felt horrible to be and depending on the place and the people you meet and
you're talking back in the 60s, I'm sure things were a lot different.
Right.
You know, there was that movie, a wonderful movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I think really, you know, I can't say for sure what it was like being in a hospital back then, but I could understand that kind of sense of, because I worked in a child care home once, and there were kids there that were just, didn't have any parents. It was like a foster place.
Aww.
There were kids there that were really mentally ill, and there were kids there that should have been in prison. And they were all mixed together. It was a